Before we begin, just so you know, I do have enough self-awareness to understand that this is a movie slash TV show slash video game reviewing channel and not some political outlet. And don't worry, I never intend on turning it into some type of political outlet. But, you know, that being said, this is a movie based on a political figure and it does paint him in a positive light. For me personally, and I'll just be totally upfront about this, I was fine with that because I do consider Ronald Reagan to be one of the best presidents that we've had. Now, if you disagree with that, that's totally fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, even if it's wrong. No, I kid. Howdy, I'm the guy with no name. Thanks for stopping by. So like I said, I love to talk about movies, TV shows, and video games, and I'm still pretty new at this, but I will say I'm actually trying to get to 200 subscribers as quickly as possible, and as of the time of this recording, I'm 5 away, so keep that in mind while you're watching, that if you enjoy this and want to see any future content, please show your support by liking and subscribing. But anyway, as far as Reagan goes, it's definitely a smaller movie, and I'm not sure how much they spent on marketing, but I wouldn't even be surprised if some of you hadn't even heard of it until now. But the real question is it worth the trouble of seeking out? So Reagan is a biopic revolving around, you guessed it, the 40th President of the United States. Based on the book, The Crusader, Ronald Reagan and the Fall of Communism by Paul Kengor, there are many flashbacks and flash-forwards encompassing just about all the highlights of his life. Interestingly enough, the narrative is told by a former KGB agent who had profiled Ronald Reagan and saw him as a threat to the USSR before anyone else. Reagan was directed by Sean McNamara, who coincidentally was a sound engineer involved in the filming of President Reagan's 1981 inauguration ceremony, and stars Dennis Quaid as Ronald Reagan, Tommy Reagan, that's R-A-G-E-N, so no relation, as Reagan as a child, David Henry as a younger Reagan, Penelope Ann Miller as Nancy Reagan, John Voight as former KGB agent Viktor Ivanov, who in real life is an amalgamation of multiple agents who thoroughly profiled the up-and-coming presidential candidate, and Alexander Krupa as Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union from 1985 to 1991. So as I kind of hinted at earlier, this movie is turning out to be divisive, basically being panned by the critics and praised by the audience. I didn't find this to be a perfect movie, but to be honest, I think it basically depends on where you fall politically. Reagan does not portray the protagonist as perfect, but it does take the side of him being a great person and leader who got us through one of the most dangerous periods in world history, primarily through a war of words and ideology. So I think already that should give you a pretty good idea as to whether this movie is for you or not. Overall, I found the acting to be quite good. It did take me about 5 to 10 minutes to buy Dennis Quaid as Ronald Reagan, but at the end of the day, I was impressed with his performance. Penelope Ann Miller was inspired casting as Nancy Reagan, and I liked how the film focused a big chunk of it on their relationship. And the majority of the supporting cast did well and elevated the film for me. Now, whenever I go into a smaller movie, my fear is always that it's going to feel small and it's not going to be very well made. And there were some scenes that it felt small, and there were some scenes that were a bit cheesy and maybe you could consider not well made, but those really were few and far between. It did feel like it had a bigger budget than it did, and my wife and I ended up enjoying the movie quite a bit. For me, what stood out most were some of the messages of the film. From understanding history so it doesn't repeat itself, to freedom never being more than one generation away from extinction, to persevering through pain, difficulty, and failure, to maintaining peace through strength, and just a lot of the different Christian principles that were mentioned. A lot of those just really hit home for me. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't give the film props for maintaining a certain level of historical accuracy. I found it to be pretty impressive, and it was definitely aided by the fact that they filmed at the actual Reagan Ranch whenever the scene called for it. I think overall I would rate Reagan 4 out of 5 stars. I really did like it, but I do admit there are some flaws, and it doesn't have a big rewatch factor. But listen, I think this movie's either going to be for you or it's not going to be for you. I don't think there's much in between. I think that I would highly recommend it to anybody who is halfway interested or even on the fence about it. I think you're gonna like it, and it's gonna be better than you think. But if you already thought negatively about it, and after hearing what I had to say, you think even more negatively about it, then I wouldn't waste your time. I don't think it's for you. I don't think you're gonna like it. There might be some people who at least can appreciate the historical aspect of it, and maybe even respect certain facets of Ronald Reagan as a person, even if they disagree politically. But if the critic and audience ratings are any indication, I think that's unlikely, and there's just such a big divide and a big disagreement on this film, and I think it, like I said, it has to do with politics. And I don't at all plan, like I said, on making this channel political. The most I'm ever going to do is what I just did, you know, talk about my thoughts on a movie, and if it's political in nature and relevant, then maybe explain any views or biases that I might have that either positively or negatively affected my enjoyment of the film. So let's keep it civil in the comments section, guys. Let's not get into any big debates or arguments. I'm not looking to spawn any of those or participate in any of those, and I'll be on the lookout for that, because I don't want to turn into something ugly. It's just a movie at the end of the day, and let me know in the comments, you know, do you plan on seeing it or not, or have you seen it or not? Did you like it or not? You know, be honest about your thoughts, but let's not argue about stuff like that. And by the way, if you did enjoy this video, I should say, then check out my review of The Sound of Freedom. I think it'll be right up your alley. And if you're looking for something more mainstream, definitely check out my recent review of Alien Romulus. But anyways, I appreciate you guys. This is Guy with No Name, signing off.